What if I told you that the way we measure time today, with clocks ticking seconds and calendars flipping pages, is just one tiny fragment of a story that stretches back thousands of years? Across ancient civilizations, time wasn't just a countdown to the next meeting or deadline. It was a living, breathing force woven into the very fabric of existence. Picture standing beneath the shadow of a Mayan pyramid, where priests tracked the movements of Venus with such precision that their predictions still hold up against modern astronomy. Or imagine walking through the ruins of ancient Egypt, where the rising of Sirius marked not just the start of a new year, but the promise of life-giving floods. These weren't just calendars, they were masterpieces of human ingenuity, mirrors reflecting how entire cultures understood their place in the cosmos. Think about it. Every society that ever rose to greatness left behind a unique way of marking time, and each one tells us something extraordinary about what they valued. The Babylonians looked to the stars and saw the hand of the gods, crafting a calendar steeped in omens and destiny. The Inca, high in the Andes, built stone towers to catch the first light of the solstice, aligning their world with the sun's sacred journey. These calendars weren't cold, mechanical tools. They were alive with meaning, blending science, spirituality, and survival into a single, profound system. What secrets do they hold about the people who created them? And what forgotten wisdom might they still offer us today? That's the mystery we're about to unravel. From the intricate cycles of the Mayan Long Count, which stretched across millennia, to the Egyptian solar calendar, so accurate it laid the groundwork for our modern timekeeping, these ancient systems were far more than ways to track days. They were blueprints of belief, maps of the universe, and even warnings etched in stone. Some predicted celestial events with stunning accuracy, while others encoded prophecies that still haunt our imagination. So let's step into the shadows of these lost civilizations and listen to what their calendars are whispering across the ages, because when we decode their secrets, we're not just learning about the past, we're rediscovering a part of ourselves. To grasp just how differently ancient civilizations viewed time, we have to step outside our modern mindset entirely. Today, we imagine time as a straight line, a relentless march from past to future. But for the Maya, time spiraled in grand, repeating cycles, each era carrying its own destiny. Their long count calendar stretched over 5,000 years, meticulously tracking celestial patterns they believed shaped human events. Priests would consult these cosmic rhythms like a sacred script, interpreting eclipses and planetary alignments as messages from the gods. Even their pyramids doubled as astronomical clocks, with stairways counting the days until a cycle's end. The Egyptians, meanwhile, tied time to the lifeblood of their civilization, the Nile. Their calendar didn't just mark days, it predicted the floods that fertilized their fields. When Sirius, the brightest star, rose just before dawn, it signaled the river's annual surge. This moment was so vital that their entire year revolved around it, dividing time into 3 seasons: flood, growth, and harvest. To them, time wasn't abstract, it was the rhythm of survival, a dance between earth and sky. Then there were the Babylonians, who turned the heavens into a divine ledger. Their lunar calendar was laced with omens, each month governed by a different god. A delayed moonrise might spell disaster, an eclipse could topple kings. Astronomer priests scanned the night sky like detectives, decoding celestial events as warnings or blessings. For them, time was a conversation with the gods, a puzzle where every planetary motion held meaning. What unites these systems is how they blur the line between science and spirit. Unlike our detached clocks, ancient calendars pulsed with intention. They didn't just measure time, they gave it purpose, linking human lives to the cosmos. When a Mayan priest calculated Venus's path or an Egyptian scribe recorded Sirius's rise, they weren't just tracking days, they were charting humanity's place in something vast and sacred. Perhaps that's the most striking difference. Where we see time as a resource to spend, they saw it as a story to live. The Mayan Long Count calendar wasn't just a way to track days, it was a vast cosmic clock, designed to measure epochs longer than most civilizations last. Imagine a system so precise it could predict the movements of Venus 500 years into the future, or align temple doorways to catch the first light of the solstice with pinpoint accuracy. For the Maya, time wasn't linear, it spiraled in cycles of creation and destruction, each lasting roughly 5,125 years. When their calendar's 13th cycle approached its end in 2012, modern pop culture spun it into doomsday prophecies. But the Maya themselves likely saw it differently, not as an end, but as a rebirth, a turning of the great wheel. What made their calendar extraordinary wasn't just its scale, but its depth. Priests used it to map celestial patterns onto human events, treating planetary alignments like divine Morse code. An eclipse wasn't just an astronomical event, it was a message, a warning of upheaval or a call to ritual. Temples like El Castillo at Chichen Itzá doubled as timekeeping devices. Their stairways counted the days, and shadows slithered like serpents down the steps at equinoxes, a choreography of stone and sunlight. Even their daily lives pulsed with these rhythms. Planting crops, waging wars, or crowning kings all hinged on readings of the cosmic calendar. Yet this brilliance makes their collapse even more haunting. At the height of the classic period, Mayan cities thrived, their scribes recording celestial data with meticulous detail. Then, within decades, their great centers were abandoned. Some scholars point to drought, others to political strife, but what if their own calendar held clues? Their prophecies spoke of cycles ending in turmoil, of worlds remade. Did they see their own unraveling in the stars? The Long Count's final pages are lost, leaving us to wonder if they foresaw their fate, or if, like us, they stood at the mercy of time's great tide, interpreters of a code they couldn't fully escape. What survives, though, is their legacy, a vision of time as something alive, woven into the fabric of existence. Where we see clocks, they saw conversations with the universe. Their calendar wasn't just a tool, it was a testament to humanity's endless quest to find meaning in the turning of the heavens. And perhaps that's the most enduring mystery of all. Not how they counted the days, but how they listened to what those days were trying to say. The Egyptian solar calendar wasn't just a way to track days, it was a sacred covenant between the earth and the heavens. Picture this: every summer, as the Nile's waters began to rise, the brightest star in the night sky, Sirius, would appear just before dawn after months of invisibility. This heliacal rising wasn't a coincidence to the ancient Egyptians. It was a divine signal, a celestial handshake that set their entire world in motion. Their calendar, one of the first to divide the year into 365 days, was far more than a practical tool. It was the heartbeat of their civilization, syncing the rhythm of the river, the labor of the fields, and the rituals of the gods into a single, harmonious flow. At the core of this system was Mat, the principle of cosmic order. The Egyptians didn't just observe time, they revered it as a reflection of balance in the universe. When Sirius rose and the Nile flooded, it wasn't just an agricultural event, it was Mat manifesting on Earth, a reminder that human life was inextricably tied to the cosmos. Priests used the calendar to orchestrate festivals honoring Osiris, the god of rebirth, whose myth mirrored the Nile cycles of death and renewal. Even the pharaohs ruled by this celestial clock, their coronations and decrees timed to align with these sacred intervals. To disrupt the calendar would have been to unravel the very fabric of existence. What's astonishing is how precisely they mapped these patterns. Without telescopes or calculators, Egyptian astronomers tracked Sirius's movements so accurately that their calendar drifted by just one day every 4 years, a margin so slim it took centuries for even the Romans to improve upon it. Temples like Karnak were built as monumental timekeepers, their doorways positioned to catch the solstice sun, bathing inner sanctuaries in light on the holiest days. This wasn't just science, it was a dialogue with the divine, a way to ensure the gods smiled upon the harvest, the kingdom, and the afterlife. Yet their calendar also reveals a profound tension. While Sirius's return brought life, it also marked the start of the inundation season, a time of upheaval when fields drowned and labor ceased. The Egyptians didn't shy from this duality. They embraced it, seeing time as a balance of chaos and order. Their calendar didn't just predict the floods, it prepared hearts and minds for the trials they brought. In this way, it was as much a spiritual guide as a practical one, teaching resilience in the face of nature's unpredictability. Today, we marvel at their ingenuity, but we've lost something vital in our modern relationship with time. For the Egyptians, a year wasn't just a countdown, it was a story, each season a chapter in humanity's partnership with the divine. Their calendar didn't just measure days, it wove them into a grand tapestry of meaning. Perhaps that's why their system endures in our imagination, not because it was accurate, but because it was alive. It reminds us that time at its best isn't something we spend, it's something we inhabit. The Babylonians didn't just watch the moon, they listened to it. Their lunar calendar wasn't a simple tally of days but a sacred ledger, where every crescent and eclipse carried the weight of divine intention. Imagine standing on the ziggurat steps in ancient Babylon, priests scanning the night sky as if reading the gods' handwriting. Each month began not by rote calculation but by the first sighting of the new moon, a moment charged with ritual significance. If clouds obscured the sky, the month might stretch an extra day, bending time itself to the whims of weather and celestial mystery. What made their system extraordinary was its duality, both deeply spiritual and astonishingly precise. While their months followed the moon's 29 or 30-day cycle, this left their calendar roughly 11 days short of the solar year. Without adjustment, festivals would drift through the seasons, sowing chaos in agriculture and governance. So the Babylonians devised a solution: intercalation. Every few years they inserted an extra month, realigning lunar rhythms with solar reality. But this wasn't mere bureaucracy, it was cosmology in action. The decision to add a month rested with the king and priests, who interpreted celestial omens, unusual planetary alignments, eclipses, even animal entrails as signs from the gods. Timekeeping became an act of devotion, a negotiation between heaven and earth. Their astronomical records reveal a sophistication that still stuns historians. Clay tablets from Babylon detail eclipse patterns with near-modern accuracy, tracking the so-called Saros cycle, a repeating 18-year sequence of lunar and solar eclipses. One tablet, the Diary of Astronomical Observations, logs planetary movements from the reign of King Nebuchadnezzar II with clinical precision, proving they could predict celestial events centuries before telescopes existed. But to the Babylonians, these weren't just data points, they were messages. An eclipse might herald the death of a king. Jupiter's retrograde motion could signal famine or war. Their calendar fused mathematics with mythology, turning the sky into a celestial telegraph system. This worldview rippled far beyond Babylon. Their lunar framework became the backbone of the Hebrew and Islamic calendars, where months still begin with the new moon. Even our 7-day week traces back to them, each day tied to one of 7 celestial bodies they revered: Saturn's day, Sun's day, Moon's day. But perhaps their most enduring legacy was the idea that time itself held meaning beyond mere measurement. Where the Egyptians saw cycles of renewal and the Maya saw spirals of destiny, the Babylonians saw a conversation, one where humanity wasn't just observing the cosmos but participating in it. Every eclipse they predicted, every month they intercalated, was a reply to the gods, a way of saying, "We are listening." Yet for all their precision, their calendar also reveals a humbling truth. Despite their prowess, the Babylonians' new time wasn't truly theirs to control. It belonged to the gods, and even their best calculations couldn't erase the need for interpretation, for divination. In that tension between celestial mechanics and divine will lies something profoundly human. We still grapple with it today, whether we're setting clocks or staring at stars, forever caught between counting the days and wondering what they mean. While the Babylonians saw time as divine messages and the Maya as cosmic cycles, the Chinese calendar wove both heaven and earth into a single, harmonious system. Picture a farmer in ancient China planting rice not just by the season but by the precise alignment of moon phases and solar terms. This wasn't just practicality, it was philosophy in motion, a living expression of balance central to Taoist and Confucian thought. The calendar's brilliance lay in its dual nature: lunar months marked by the moon's waxing and waning, yet synchronized with the solar year through intricate calculations that kept festivals like the Spring Festival tethered to the seasons. Every 19 years, an extra month was added, a dance of numbers ensuring planting and harvest rituals never drifted out of sync with nature's rhythm. At the heart of this system were the 12 animal zodiac signs, each year imbued with the energy of a creature: rat's cleverness, dragon's power, pig's generosity. But the calendar went deeper, layering these with 5 elemental forces: wood, fire, earth, metal, and water, creating a 60-year cycle of unique combinations. A wood dragon year carried different portents than a fire rabbit, guiding everything from marriage dates to imperial coronations. Emperors ruled by this cosmic clock, their mandates seen as divinely ordained when aligned with celestial harmony. Even warfare paused during inauspicious months, as disrupting nature's balance risked catastrophe. The calendar's endurance is staggering. Today, farmers still consulted for planting, and billions celebrate Lunar New Year by its reckonings. But its true legacy is its vision of interconnectedness, where a missed eclipse could signal dynastic collapse, and a well-timed festival ensured prosperity. In an age of climate crisis, this ancient wisdom whispers a question: what if timekeeping wasn't about control, but collaboration with the world around us? The Chinese calendar doesn't just count days, it reminds us that every moment is a thread in nature's vast, living tapestry. The Hindu Panchang doesn't just measure time, it transforms it into a roadmap for the soul. Unlike linear calendars counting toward an arbitrary finish, this ancient system sees time as a spiral of spiritual evolution, where every sunrise and moon phase carries divine significance. Picture a priest in Varanasi chanting hymns as dawn breaks, his rituals timed to the precise moment ordained by the Panchang. This calendar isn't just a tool, it's a living scripture, weaving together the orbits of planets, the phases of the moon, and the rhythms of human devotion into a single tapestry. At its core are the 5 elements. Panchang literally means 5 limbs, mapping lunar days, solar movements, constellations, planetary alignments, and auspicious moments. Each element intertwines to guide everything from wedding dates to temple ceremonies, turning ordinary days into portals for transcendence. What sets the Panchang apart is its vision of epochs or yugas, each spanning thousands of years and embodying a shift in cosmic consciousness. We're said to live in the Kali Yuga, an age of spiritual decline, yet even this bleakest era holds purpose, a necessary phase in the cycle of creation and renewal. The calendar doesn't just acknowledge these cycles, it prepares devotees to navigate them, offering rituals and festivals designed to counteract the era's challenges. Diwali, for instance, isn't merely a festival of lights, it's a cosmic reset, a moment when the veil between worlds thins and inner illumination becomes possible. The precision behind this system is staggering. Ancient Indian astronomers calculated planetary motions with equations rivaling modern astronomy, all without telescopes. The Surya Siddhanta, a 4th century text, estimates the Earth's diameter within 1% of today's measurements. But for Hindus, these weren't just scientific feats, they were acts of devotion. Temples like Konark's Sun Temple were built as celestial calendars, their stones aligned so the equinox sun pours through doorways like liquid gold. Even today, eclipses are timed down to the second in Panchang predictions, not as spectacles but as sacred intervals when meditation bears extraordinary fruit. Yet the Panchang's true power lies in its duality. It acknowledges time's relentless flow, the kala that eventually consumes all things, while offering a path beyond it. Through rituals tied to its cycles, devotees learn to step outside temporal bounds, touching the eternal. A single day might be divided into 60 gatakas, each ruled by a deity, turning the mundane into the miraculous. Birth charts drawn from the Panchang don't just predict fate, they reveal soul lessons mapping karma across lifetimes. In this way, the calendar becomes more than a measure of days. It's a mirror reflecting humanity's deepest quest to find meaning in the fleeting and the infinite in the now. Perhaps that's why the Panchang endures, guiding millions in an age of digital clocks and atomic time. It reminds us that time isn't just something we spend or save, but something we sanctify. Where modern life fractures attention across seconds and notifications, this ancient system whispers, every moment is a thread in the universe's grand design, and how we weave it matters. The Panchang doesn't just count time, it makes time count. High in the Andes, where the air thins and the stars blaze with impossible clarity, the Inca didn't just watch the sky, they built it into the earth itself. Unlike the Maya's intricate codices or Babylon's clay tablets, their calendar wasn't recorded in ink or script. It was etched into the landscape, a living network of stone towers, shadow-casting pillars, and sacred boulders like the Intihuatana at Machu Picchu, a name meaning hitching post of the sun. This wasn't metaphor, it was mechanics. During solstices, sunlight would strike the stone's edges with surgical precision, casting shadows that told priests exactly when to plant or harvest. The Inca didn't just track time, they anchored it, tying the sun's journey to the survival of an empire stretched across some of the world's most unforgiving terrain. What made their system extraordinary was its fusion of practicality and divinity. The towers of Chanquillo, a line of 13 stone sentinels perched on a desert ridge, functioned like a colossal sundial. As the sun slid across the horizon, its position relative to each tower marked dates with an accuracy rivaling modern calendars. Farmers didn't need parchment or calculations, they could read the year's progression by glancing at the horizon. Yet these markers were also temples. The solstice sunrise didn't just signal potato planting. It was the moment in time the sun god renewed his pact with humanity. Timekeeping wasn't a science separate from spirituality. It was the language in which the divine spoke to the mortal. The Inca's mastery of celestial agriculture reveals a deeper philosophy. Their empire spanned microclimates from rainforest to glacier, and a mistimed harvest meant starvation. By syncing crops to solar events, they turned uncertainty into abundance. Quinoa was sown when the Pleiades constellation appeared bright and clear, a sign of coming rains. Corn festivals coincided with the zenith sun when shadows vanished, symbolizing the sun's full embrace of the earth. Even their roads, built straight as sunbeams, doubled as astronomical sightlines, connecting far-flung territories under a shared cosmic rhythm. But perhaps the most haunting testament to their system's power lies in its fragility. When the Spanish arrived, they smashed Intihuatana stones, calling them idolatrous. Yet some markers survived hidden or too vast to destroy. Today, at June's winter solstice, Quechua descendants still gather at Sacsayhuaman to greet the sun with outstretched hands, proving the Inca's calendar wasn't just stone and shadow. It was a covenant between earth and sky, one that outlasts empires. Their legacy whispers a radical idea that time isn't something we measure, but something we belong to. A dance of light and soil we're all part of, whether we notice it or not. The Aztec sun stone looms from the past like a cosmic warning, a 24-ton masterpiece of carved basalt that holds far more than dates. Often mislabeled as a simple calendar, this intricate disk is actually a map of the Aztec universe, where time and destiny collide. At its center glows the face of Tonatiuh, the sun god, his tongue a sacrificial blade demanding the one thing that could keep the cosmos in motion: human blood. For the Aztecs, time wasn't a passive backdrop to life. It was a fragile covenant between humanity and the gods, balanced on the edge of a knife. The stone's concentric rings reveal the layers of their timekeeping genius. The innermost circle depicts their sacred 260-day ritual calendar, the Tonalpohualli, a spiritual almanac guiding everything from birth omens to battle strategies. Next comes the 365-day solar cycle, Zu-Pohualli, tracking agricultural seasons and state ceremonies. But the true brilliance lies in how these cycles interlock. Like meshed gears, the two calendars realigned every 52 years in what the Aztecs called the binding of the years. During this convergence, they'd extinguish all fires across the empire, shattering household pots in a symbolic return to chaos. Priests would then perform a new fire ceremony on a captive's chest, lighting a blaze that promised another cycle of existence. Fail, and the sun might never rise again. What makes the sun stone so startling is how it merges mathematical precision with mortal terror. The Aztecs tracked Venus's movements with near-modern accuracy, yet believed their calculations alone couldn't sustain time. Sacrifice wasn't cruelty, it was cosmic maintenance, the price of keeping dawn from fading into eternal night. The stone's 4 previous suns, carved around Tonatiuh, told a chilling story. Each era had ended in cataclysm, from jaguar attacks to fiery rain. The 5th sun, their own age, would fall too unless nourished by human hearts. This artifact forces us to confront a radical idea: that time might not be indifferent. Unlike our digital clocks, silently ticking regardless of human action, the Aztec calendar pulsed with urgency. Every sunrise was a victory, every solstice a negotiation with the divine. Even their festivals mirrored this tension. The month of Toxcatl honored Tezcatlipoca, the capricious god of fate, with a year-long sacrifice. A chosen youth, treated as a living deity, would dance through the streets before his heart was offered, embodying time's bittersweet paradox, creation demanding destruction. Today, the sunstone hangs in Mexico's National Museum, stripped of its blood rituals but not its power. Modern visitors still pause beneath its gaze, sensing the weight of its message. In an age where time feels commodified, sold in productivity apps, and wasted in traffic, the stone whispers a question. What if our minutes weren't just slots to fill, but sacred threads in a vast, fragile tapestry? The Aztecs knew something we've forgotten, that how we mark time changes how we live it. Their calendar didn't just count days, it asked what each one was worth. The Greeks faced a puzzle that had stumped civilizations before them: how to marry the moon's ever-shifting phases with the sun's steady march across the seasons. Their solution, the Metonic cycle, a 19-year symphony of celestial mathematics that harmonized two seemingly irreconcilable rhythms. Picture an Athenian astronomer named Meton observing the skies in the 5th century BCE, noting that after 19 solar years, the moon returned to almost the exact same phase on the same calendar date. This wasn't just a neat coincidence, it was a key to unlocking time itself. By inserting 7 extra months across those 19 years, the Greeks bridged the gap between lunar piety and solar practicality, ensuring that festivals honoring Artemis, goddess of the moon, didn't drift into seasons meant for Demeter's harvest rites. What made this system revolutionary was its duality. On one hand, it was a feat of pure rationality, a mathematical framework so precise it's still embedded in the Easter calculations of Christian churches today. On the other, it pulsed with mythic significance. The number 19 wasn't arbitrary. It echoed the 18-year Saros cycle of eclipses, known to Babylonian astronomers but now woven into Greek cosmology. Even the Olympics, held every 4 years, found their place in this grand temporal tapestry, synchronized to ensure the games coincided with celestial omens deemed favorable by oracles. Timekeeping wasn't just about accuracy, it was about aligning human endeavor with the gods' design. Philosophers like Plato and Aristotle wrestled with the implications. In Timaeus, Plato envisioned time as a moving image of eternity, a celestial mechanism created by the demiurge to mirror perfect, unchanging forms. Aristotle, ever the empiricist, saw time as a measurement of motion countable, divisible, yet inseparable from change itself. Their debates rippled through the ages, shaping Western concepts of linear time while leaving room for the cyclical patterns revered in their festivals. The Metonic cycle became a living compromise between these worldviews, mathematically rigorous yet spiritually resonant, a calendar that honored both the gods and the geometry of the heavens. The legacy of this system stretches far beyond antiquity. Hidden within the intricate gears of the Antikythera mechanism, an ancient Greek computer used to predict astronomical events, lies the Metonic cycle's imprint, proof of its enduring utility. Modern lunisolar calendars, from the Hebrew to the Chinese, still employ adaptations of its 19-year rhythm, but perhaps its greatest lesson is cultural. The Greeks didn't just solve a technical problem. They revealed how timekeeping could be both a science and a sacrament, a way to navigate the cosmos without losing sight of the divine. In an age where our atomic clocks tick with inhuman precision, their vision whispers a reminder that time, at its heart, remains a story we tell together between earth and sky, between numbers and meaning. Julius Caesar didn't just conquer Gaul, he conquered time itself. In 46 BCE, as Rome teetered between republic and empire, he unveiled a radical new calendar that would reshape how the Western world measured its days. The old Roman calendar, a chaotic patchwork of lunar reckoning and political tampering, had drifted so far out of sync with the seasons that harvest festivals fell in winter and taxes came due before crops ripened. Caesar's solution, a clean break with tradition, borrowing from Egyptian solar astronomy to create a 365-day year with an extra day every 4 years. On the surface, it was a triumph of science, but beneath the numbers lay a masterstroke of power. By standardizing time across the vast Roman world, Caesar didn't just align the calendar with the sun, he aligned it with his own authority. The Julian calendar's brilliance lay in its simplicity. Dividing the year into 12 months of fixed lengths, it eliminated the priestly discretion that had let Rome's elites manipulate time for political gain. No longer could pontifices extend a consul's term by adding extra days or shorten an enemy's by withholding them. Time became imperial property, as regulated as the legions marching under Caesar's banners. Even the new leap year bore his stamp. February's extra day fell on the 6th before the kalends of March, a date later rebranded as bis sextum, the origin of our term bisextile. Every 4 years, Rome literally repeated a day in his honor, weaving his legacy into the fabric of time. Yet this reform wasn't just about control, it was about identity. The renaming of quintiles to July after Julius and later sextiles to August, for Augustus turned months into monuments, etching imperial cult into daily life. Farmers sowing barley in April or merchants settling debts in October were now participants in a temporal cult of personality. The calendar became a silent herald, whispering Caesar's name with each passing season. Even the 7-day week, adapted from Babylonian astrology, served this purpose. Sunday, dies solis, honored the sun god while subtly echoing Apollo, Caesar's claimed divine patron. The calendar's endurance is staggering. For over 16 centuries, from Roman Britain to Byzantium, it governed lives with minimal tweaks until Pope Gregory's correction in 1582. But its true legacy isn't just in days counted, it's in the precedent it set. Caesar proved that whoever controls the calendar controls culture, economics, even faith. When Christian leaders later co-opted pagan festivals into Christmas and Easter, or when French revolutionaries tried and failed to decimalize time, they followed his playbook: reshape time and you reshape society. Today, as we tap digital reminders without a thought, we're still living in Caesar's shadow, unwitting heirs to a system where politics and cosmology are forever entwined. His calendar didn't just mark time, it made time mark him. To the Norse, time wasn't just measured, it was whispered in the language of the gods. Their runic calendar, or Primstav, wasn't a mere tool for counting days. It was a sacred object, often carved into bone or wood, where every notch and symbol pulsed with layers of meaning. Picture a farmer in medieval Norway, tracing his finger along the grooves of a wooden staff, each rune marking not just a lunar phase but a confluence of practical need and cosmic significance. The 16 runes of the Younger Futhorc alphabet did more than divide the year. They connected earthly cycles to the realm of Odin, Freya, and Thor, turning the passage of time into a dialogue with the divine. At its core, the Primstav was a lunisolar masterpiece, reconciling the moon's 29.5-day cycle with the solar year's demands. But unlike the rigid grids of modern calendars, it flowed with seasonal intuition. Feast days like Yule and Midsummer were tied to celestial events, while runes like Jera, symbolizing harvest, reminded users that time moved in cycles of reward and labor. Yet the calendar's true power lay in its duality. The same rune that marked the planting moon might also invoke protection or curse an enemy, depending on how it was carved or spoken. Timekeeping wasn't neutral, it was alive with intention, a fusion of survival and sorcery. The Norse didn't just observe time, they believed it could be shaped. Runic inscriptions often doubled as spells, with carvings at solstices or eclipses thought to amplify their power. A Primstav might bear the Alges rune, resembling outstretched arms, to invoke divine shielding during the perilous winter months. Even the act of marking days held ritual weight. Each stroke of the knife was a pact with fate, a way to align human lives with the threads woven by the Norns at the base of Yggdrasil. To modern eyes, this might seem superstitious, but to the Norse, it was simply how the world worked. Time and magic were strands of the same rope. What's striking is how deeply this system endured. Long after Christianity reached Scandinavia, farmers clung to their primstavs, blending runes with crosses in a quiet resistance to linear, church-dominated time. Fragments of these calendars have been found as late as the 19th century, their symbols adapted but still whispering of older truths. Today, we've lost that intimacy with time's texture. Our digital alarms don't carry the weight of prophecy, and our planners rarely double as talismans. But the Primstav's legacy lingers in questions we've forgotten to ask. What if time isn't just something we track, but something we touch? What if the gods still speak, not in seconds, but in seasons? The Persian solar calendar wasn't just a way to mark days. It was a masterpiece of mathematics and mysticism, where numbers danced with philosophy under the guidance of Omar Khayyam. Picture this: in the 11th century, while Europe still struggled with Julian calendar drift, Khayyam and his fellow scholars in Isfahan calculated the solar year with breathtaking precision: 365 days, 5 hours, 49 minutes, just seconds off modern measurements. Their Jalali calendar, named after Sultan Jalal al-Din, didn't just correct past errors, it redefined timekeeping itself, introducing leap years with rules so accurate that it would take 5,000 years before their system accumulated a single day's error. This wasn't just science, it was artistry, a celestial clockwork designed to harmonize earthly life with cosmic truth. What set this calendar apart was how deeply it intertwined with Persian culture. Unlike rigid administrative tools, it bloomed with poetic symbolism. Each month bore names that sang of nature's rhythms: Farvardin, the month of radiant spirits; Tur, named for the life-giving rain; Maya, embodying love and harvest light. Poets like Rumi and Hafez didn't just reference these months, they wove them into verses that equated the turning year with the soul's journey. When Hafez wrote, "The rose of time is brief, O heart, drink the wine of now," he wasn't merely romanticizing seasons, he was channeling a world where time's passage was both an astronomical fact and a spiritual allegory. The calendar became a bridge between observatory and orchard, between stargazers and mystics who saw in its cycles echoes of divine breath. Khayyam himself embodied this duality. Known to the West for his Rubaiyat sensual verses, he was also the mathematician who mapped the heavens with unprecedented rigor. His calendar reforms emerged from years spent correcting celestial tables at the Seljuk Empire's Grand Observatory, where astronomers tracked Mercury's orbit with instruments as precise as their poetry was profound. The Jalali system's solar focus was revolutionary in an Islamic world that predominantly used lunar calendars, yet it coexisted peacefully with religious timekeeping, proving that science and faith didn't have to clash. The calendar's legacy lingers in unexpected places. Modern Iran still uses Khayyam's solar framework for civic life, while Afghanistan's Nowruz festival, the Persian New Year at the spring equinox, draws millions to celebrate renewal from Istanbul to Tajikistan. Even our modern leap year calculations owe a quiet debt to those medieval scholars who proved time could be both measured and marveled at. Their greatest lesson wasn't in the math, though, it was in the vision. Where other cultures saw time as a force to fear or a resource to hoard, Persian tradition saw it as a garden. You could walk its paths with a scholar's eye and a poet's heart, knowing each moment was ripe with both calculation and wonder. The Jewish calendar doesn't just track time, it sanctifies it. Imagine standing in Jerusalem as the first sliver of the new moon appears, marking not just another month but a moment woven with millennia of tradition. This is the Hebrew calendar, a living bridge between earth and sky, where lunar months and solar years dance in perfect harmony to keep Passover always in spring and Sukkot under autumn's harvest moon. At its heart lies a paradox. While months follow the moon's 29 or 30-day rhythm, the year must stay tethered to the sun's seasons. The solution: the 19-year Metonic cycle, borrowed yet perfected, where 7 leap years add an extra month to realign lunar piety with solar necessity. But this isn't just math, it's memory made tangible, ensuring that when modern Jews sit at the Seder table, they're tasting the same spring herbs their ancestors did 3,000 years ago. What makes this system extraordinary is how it turns time into theology. Each month begins not by astronomical calculation alone, but by the testimony of witnesses who'd spotted the new moon, a practice that once sent messengers racing through Judea's hills to announce the start of holy days. Even today, the calendar's deliberate imprecision, sometimes adding a day to ensure Yom Kippur never falls adjacent to Shabbat, reveals a profound truth. Time isn't just observed, it's negotiated with the divine. Holidays aren't mere anniversaries but reenactments. Passover isn't a memorial of liberation, but an invitation to personally cross the Red Sea again. The calendar becomes a time machine, collapsing history into the present. Dive deeper, and you'll find layers of meaning in every detail. The month of Tishrei opens with Rosh Hashanah, the head of the year, yet it's the 7th month, a nod to the Sabbath's sanctity. Nisan, the month of Exodus, is called the first month in Torah, a reminder that liberation, not creation, defines Jewish time. Even the calendar's missing years calculated from Adam's creation speak to a world where time is measured not in empires or inventions but in souls and their covenants. The Hebrew calendar's endurance is a testament to resilience. Despite diaspora, persecution, and modernity's pull, it's never been abandoned, not even when competing with Gregorian convenience. Farmers in ancient Israel once needed these cycles to plant and pilgrim. Today, a programmer in Tel Aviv might consult the same dates to schedule a Zoom Seder. That continuity is the calendar's true miracle. It doesn't just preserve the past, it makes the past present, turning every new moon into another stitch in an unbroken thread stretching back to Sinai. In a world obsessed with counting seconds, this ancient system whispers, time isn't something you spend, it's something you sanctify. The Islamic Hijri calendar moves to a rhythm entirely its own, a celestial heartbeat untethered from the seasons. While most ancient timekeeping systems fought to balance moon and sun, Islam embraced the lunar cycle with singular devotion, creating a calendar that floats freely through the solar year. Picture a desert night in 7th century Arabia, where the first sighting of the crescent moon didn't just mark a new month, it signaled divine time, unbound by harvests or solstices. This was time stripped to its essence, a system where Ramadan might arrive in winter's chill or summer's swelter, teaching believers that spiritual discipline isn't tied to earthly comfort but to the unwavering pulse of faith. What makes the Hijri calendar extraordinary isn't just its lunar purity but the philosophy it embodies. Unlike the Persian Jalali or Gregorian calendars, which anchor events to seasons, Islam's holy days migrate across the solar year, completing a full cycle every 33 years. When pilgrims gather for Hajj, they might circle the Kaaba under scorching August sun or December rains, a vivid reminder that devotion transcends climate and convenience. The calendar's very structure, with months lasting 29 or 30 days based on moon sightings, rejects mechanical precision in favor of human witness. Even today, committees across the Muslim world scan the twilight sky for that first silver sliver, a practice that keeps timekeeping intimate, communal, and alive with anticipation. This fluidity carries profound meaning. By decoupling sacred time from nature's cycles, the Hijri calendar underscores Islam's focus on divine sovereignty. Ramadan's fasting grows more arduous when it falls in long summer days, yet the challenge is the point. Submission isn't meant to be easy or predictable. The calendar's start date the Prophet's migration from Mecca to Medina in 622 CE further roots it in faith rather than astronomy. While other cultures marked time by kings or crops, Islam chose an event of spiritual rebirth, making every year a count of renewal rather than rulership. Yet the Hijri system isn't without practical ingenuity. To reconcile lunar months with the need for predictability in trade and law, scholars developed intricate astronomical tables. The tabular Islamic calendar, used alongside moon sightings, employs a 30-year cycle with 11 leap days, keeping the calendar remarkably aligned with lunar phases. Even the names of months whisper history. Muharram, the sacred month of mourning; Shaban, the neglected month of preparation before Ramadan; Dhul Hijjah, the season of pilgrimage. Each carries layers of ritual and memory, turning the passage of time into a walking meditation. In a world obsessed with syncing clocks to atomic vibrations, the Islamic calendar offers a radical alternative: time as surrender. There's poetry in its wandering, a lesson that some things like devotion, like the moon, can't be pinned to a grid. When a Muslim family breaks their fast at sunset, they're not just following a schedule. They're joining a chain of witnesses stretching back 14 centuries, all turning their faces to the same sky, reading time not in days but in faith. The Hijri calendar doesn't just measure months, it measures moments of connection, each crescent moon a fresh brushstroke on an eternal canvas. Deep in the forests of ancient Gaul, where oak trees stood as pillars between earth and sky, the Druids didn't just track time, they listened to its heartbeat. The Coligny calendar, a shattered bronze artifact discovered in 1897, holds fragments of their genius, a lunar-solar hybrid so precise it could sync the moon's phases with the turning seasons over 30-year cycles. But this wasn't just a tool for counting days. Carved into its weathered surface are notations for festivals like Samhain, when the veil between worlds thinned, and Beltane, fires blazing with the promise of summer. Each mark was a thread in a grander tapestry, weaving celestial events, sacred trees, and the rhythms of the natural world into a single, living system. What set the Druids apart was their vision of time as a conversation with the cosmos. Unlike rigid solar or lunar calendars, theirs danced between both, inserting intercalary months to harmonize the mismatch between moon cycles and solar years. Months were divided into lucky and unlucky days, their names tied to trees: birch moon, oak moon, ivy moon, reflecting a belief that time itself was rooted in nature's wisdom. The winter month of Samanios, for instance, wasn't just a season of cold, it was the realm of the elder tree, a time for introspection and honoring ancestors. To mark a festival like Imbolc in early February wasn't merely a date on a grid. It was to stand at the threshold of lambing season, sensing the first stirrings of life beneath frost-hardened earth. The calendar's mechanics reveal startling sophistication. Symbols like mat, good, and annum, not good, flank certain days, hinting at a system where time carried moral weight. A single month could shift between 29 and 30 days based on lunar observations, with entire months added every 2.5 years to correct drift. But the true marvel lies in its purpose. This wasn't just for planting crops or taxing tribes. It was a map of sacred energy. Druid priests likely used it to determine when to harvest mistletoe only during the 6th lunar month with a golden sickle, or when to interpret omens in the flight of birds. Even the calendar's physical form mattered. Inscribed in bronze, a metal associated with the otherworld, it bridged the mundane and the mystical. Yet the Coligny calendar's fragments also whisper of loss. Roman conquest sought to erase Druidic knowledge, and the surviving tablet is a puzzle missing half its pieces. What remains, though, speaks volumes. The Druids saw time as a wheel, not a line, a cycle where endings fed beginnings, much like the Ouroboros serpent eating its tail. Their festivals weren't mere celebrations but acts of cosmic maintenance, ensuring the sun would return, the crops would grow, and the balance between worlds held firm. In an age of climate crisis, their legacy feels eerily prescient, a reminder that timekeeping isn't just about human convenience, but about stewardship. The trees they revered still stand, their rings a silent calendar of centuries. Perhaps the Druids' greatest lesson wasn't in how they counted time, but in how they honored it not as a master to obey, but as a partner to cherish. For the Aboriginal peoples of Australia, time doesn't march forward in a straight line. It spirals, swirls, and folds back on itself like the songs of ancestral beings echoing across the land. What Western cultures call the past is, in Dreamtime, always present, a living tapestry where creation stories, seasonal cycles, and celestial events exist simultaneously. Picture standing beneath the vast outback sky with an elder who points to the emu in the dark, a constellation formed not by stars but by the black spaces between them. As they trace its shape, they're not just describing an astronomical feature, they're retelling a story etched into the cosmos 60,000 years ago, one that dictates when to harvest emu eggs or when the rivers will rise. This isn't mythology frozen in antiquity. It's a map, a manual, and a meditation all at once. The genius of Aboriginal timekeeping lies in its refusal to be boxed into units or grids. Seasons aren't dictated by fixed dates but by intimate dialogues with the environment. The flowering of the woolly bush signals turtle breeding season. The arrival of the morning star Arcturus warns of winter winds. Rock art across the continent encodes tidal patterns and eclipses with scientific precision, yet these records aren't separated from their stories. A painting of the rainbow serpent isn't just art, it's a hydrological chart, a creation myth, and a seasonal alert system woven together. Time here isn't measured in hours but in relationships between land, sky, and the generations who have tended both. What unsettles Western observers is how seamlessly this system operates without clocks or calendars. The Walpiri people's Yurdi, Seven Sisters narrative tracks the Pleiades cluster's movement with such accuracy it predicts seasonal shifts, yet it's shared through dance and song, not textbooks. Similarly, the Gunditj Mara's eel traps, ancient stone aquaculture systems, are maintained according to oral traditions that encode lunar cycles and migration patterns. These aren't primitive approximations but refined knowledge systems where every ripple in a river or shift in bird calls carries temporal meaning. Dreamtime's most radical challenge to modern timekeeping is its rejection of ownership. Where other cultures built monuments to mark time's passage, stone henges, solstice alignments, or the pyramid star shafts, Aboriginal traditions leave no physical trace beyond the land itself. Time belongs not to kings or priests but to the collective memory of country, passed down through song lines that crisscross the continent like neural pathways. To walk these paths is to step outside linear time entirely, moving through stories where a rock formation might be both a geological feature and an ancestor frozen in mid-step. Perhaps that's why this system feels so urgent today. In an era of climate crisis, Dreamtime offers a model where time isn't something to exploit but to collaborate with. When Matu elders speak of reading fire seasons in the flowering patterns of desert oaks, they're not just preserving tradition. They're demonstrating a temporal literacy we've forgotten, one that sees time as a conversation with the earth rather than a countdown to extraction. The oldest continuous culture on Earth doesn't just track time, it listens to it, a reminder that clocks and calendars are poor substitutes for wisdom written in the land itself. The Sumerians didn't just invent writing, they gave time its first written rhythm. In the Fertile Crescent of Mesopotamia, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers carved paths through the dust, these ancient innovators scratched their lunar observations into damp clay tablets over 5,000 years ago. What they created wasn't just a way to track days, it was the scaffolding of civilization itself. Their calendar, divided into 12 lunar months of 29 or 30 days, became the heartbeat of the world's first cities. Uruk, Lagash, where festivals, taxes, and harvests pulsed to this celestial metronome. At the core of their system was a revelation. Time could be managed, and that management could build empires. Priests in ziggurat temples watched the night sky with methodical precision, declaring each new month at the first sighting of the crescent moon. But this wasn't just ritual, it was logistics. When to plant barley, when to collect debts, the answers lay in those waxing and waning cycles. Clay receipts from Reveal contracts tied to lunar months, proving that structured time didn't just organize religion, it fueled commerce. A farmer might promise 10 measures of grain by the third moon of Dumuzi, the month named for the shepherd god, binding earthly labor to celestial patterns. The Sumerians' genius lay in their pragmatism. Unlike later cultures that wove elaborate mythos around their calendars, theirs was a tool first, though no less sacred for it. Each month carried the name of a festival or agricultural task, from barley harvest to brick molding moon, blending cosmic observation with the gritty reality of survival. When their year fell out of sync with the seasons, they didn't philosophize, they added a 13th month, correcting the drift with a practicality that would echo down to our own leap years. Yet their greatest legacy was how this system spread. The Akkadians adopted it, the Babylonians refined it, adding zodiac signs and planetary omens. Even the Hebrew and Islamic calendars bear its lunar imprint. Why? Because the Sumerians understood something fundamental. Urbanization required synchronization. You can't build a city if one farmer sows while another reaps, or if taxes arrive unpredictably. Their calendar became the silent conductor of civilization's orchestra, ensuring that scribes, merchants, and kings moved to the same rhythm. Those clay tablets tell a quiet revolution. In one, a priest notes an eclipse that darkened the sky over Nippur. In another, a merchant tallies wool shipments due before the moon of the plow. Together, they sketch a world stepping out of nature's shadow and into measured time, a shift as profound as the wheel or the written word. The Sumerians didn't just count days, they gave humanity its first shared clock, ticking not in gears or digits, but in moonlight glinting off the Euphrates and in the wet clay that bore its witness. High in the Himalayas, where thin air makes the stars burn brighter, the Tibetan calendar doesn't just mark days, it maps the soul's journey. Imagine a monk in a mountain monastery, tracing his finger across a Pecha manuscript filled with intricate grids, where lunar phases intersect with astrological symbols and Buddhist feast days. This isn't just timekeeping, it's alchemy, blending Indian astronomical calculations with Chinese elemental theory into a system where every moment carries spiritual weight. The result is a living bridge between earth and sky, where planting barley and achieving enlightenment share the same celestial timetable. At first glance, the calendar's structure seems familiar, 12 months following the moon's rhythm, with an occasional extra month to realign with the solar year. But dive deeper and the layers unfold. Each month is governed by one of Tibet's 12 zodiac animals: tiger, rabbit, dragon. Yet these aren't mere symbols. They pulse with elemental energy, cycling through wood, fire, earth, metal, and water in a 60-year dance. A fire horse year, for instance, is considered so potent that tradition warns against ambitious projects, while a water pig year might favor introspection. Farmers consult these cycles to sow crops, while lamas use them to determine auspicious dates for rituals, like the Kalachakra initiation, where time itself becomes a mandala to be transcended. What sets this system apart is how it weaves astrology with spiritual practice. Tibetan astronomy, or Scar Artsize, calculates planetary positions with mathematical precision, yet these aren't cold coordinates. They're reflections of karma, maps showing how celestial forces ripple through human lives. Eclipses aren't just astronomical events, they're powerful moments to purify negative deeds. Even the weekdays carry meaning. Wednesday, linked to Mercury, is ideal for intellectual pursuits, while Saturday, tied to Saturn, might be reserved for overcoming obstacles. For Tibetans, time isn't neutral, it's charged with opportunity or risk, demanding mindful engagement. The calendar's most profound teaching lies in its view of time as a path to awakening. Major festivals like Losar, the New Year, aren't just celebrations but spiritual recalibrations. Monks perform Gyuta rituals to cleanse the year's accumulated negativity, while households create Torma sculptures from barley flour, offerings that dissolve like time itself, impermanent yet nourishing. Even mundane acts like planting a field are timed to harmonize with lunar phases and planetary alignments, turning agriculture into meditation. Yet this system is no relic. Modern Tibetan doctors still use the calendar to gather herbs at optimal times, believing their medicinal potency peaks under certain constellations. Astrologers craft kutsaps, personalized birth charts guiding everything from career choices to marriage compatibility. And when the Dalai Lama gives teachings, his schedule often aligns with auspicious dates, reinforcing that even the holiest moments unfold within time's tapestry. In a world obsessed with efficiency, the Tibetan calendar whispers a radical alternative. That true productivity isn't about cramming more into each hour, but aligning with time's deeper rhythms. It asks us to consider, what if clocks didn't just count minutes but carried meaning? What if every sunrise wasn't just a new day, but a new chance to weave our actions into the cosmos' grand design? The monks of Tibet have spent centuries refining this wisdom, proving that time, at its best, isn't just something we measure, it's something we honor. The Polynesian star compass wasn't just a tool, it was a living library of the night sky, where every star, swell, and seabird's flight held meaning. Picture a voyaging canoe cutting through the Pacific darkness, its navigator leaning back to trace the rising of Hokulea, the star we call Arcturus. To him, this wasn't just a point of light, it was a beacon marking the path to Tahiti, one of 32 directional houses in his mental star compass. The Polynesians didn't divide the horizon into impersonal degrees but into star paths, each tied to ancestral knowledge passed down through chants. When the Pleiades rose at sunset, it signaled the start of Makahiki, a season of peace and harvest. When the constellation of Kalo climbed high, it warned of stormy seas. Time for them wasn't counted in hours but in the rhythms of the ocean's breath and the sky's turning. What makes this system extraordinary is its fluid precision. Without compasses or clocks, navigators memorized hundreds of star positions, correlating them with wave patterns and the flight paths of migratory birds. A shift in wind against the cheek, a change in the color of the clouds, these were all data points in a celestial calendar. The star compass wasn't static, it adjusted with the seasons, realigning as familiar stars dipped below the horizon and new ones rose to guide them. This wasn't just navigation, it was a dialogue with the cosmos where time and space blurred into a single, seamless journey. On land, this same intimacy with the heavens shaped daily life. Oral calendars or kala tracked lunar months named for their relationship to nature: Lono, the wet season of growth; Ku, the dry season of fishing and warfare. Planting taro or fishing for auk wasn't dictated by a grid of dates but by the moon's phase and the songs of elders who'd memorized the signs. A full moon might mean abundant shellfish, a crescent moon, the best time to plant sweet potato. The Polynesians didn't impose order on nature, they listened to it, adapting their rhythms to the land's whispers. The genius of this system lies in its resilience. When European explorers arrived with their rigid clocks and charts, they marveled at how Polynesians could traverse thousands of miles without instruments. But the real miracle wasn't just in wayfinding, it was in worldview. Where Western calendars compartmentalized time into minutes and months, the Polynesian approach wove it into stories, songs, and survival. A navigator didn't just know when to sail, he understood why the stars rose where they did, linking human journeys to the dance of the cosmos. Today, as we rediscover these techniques through the revival of traditional voyaging canoes like Hokulea, their lessons feel urgent. In an age of GPS and atomic clocks, the Polynesian star compass reminds us that timekeeping doesn't have to mean domination. It can be a partnership. The ocean doesn't care about time zones, and the stars won't adjust their paths for human schedules. But when we learn to read them as ancestors did, time stops being something we chase. It becomes something we sail through, guided by the same stars that have always lit the way. The Babylonians didn't just chart the stars, they turned the night sky into a grand celestial clock, where every constellation held the keys to time and fate. Picture an astronomer priest in ancient Mesopotamia, crouched atop a ziggurat as he tracked the slow dance of planets through the 12 houses of the zodiac. These weren't just pretty patterns, they were divine signatures, each sign governing a month of the year and a facet of human destiny. When the sun entered Aries, spring surged forth and kings planned their campaigns. When Libra rose, it was time for treaties and harvests. The Babylonians didn't see time as empty or neutral, it was a living force, pulsing with the will of the gods, written in starlight. What made their system revolutionary was how it married precision with prophecy, using meticulous records of lunar eclipses and planetary movements. They mapped the zodiac with mathematical rigor, yet interpreted it through a lens of mysticism. A scribe might note Jupiter's retrograde in the constellation of Capricorn not just as data, but as an omen of drought or rebellion. The famous Venus tablet of Amasajuka, dating back to the 17th century BCE, doesn't merely log the planet's cycles, it links them to events on Earth like the rise and fall of dynasties. For them, astronomy and astrology weren't separate disciplines, they were two sides of the same clay tablet, one measuring time, the other revealing its meaning. The Greeks later refined this system, giving us the zodiac signs we recognize today: Aries the ram, Taurus the bull, but the heart of it remained Mesopotamian. Even the word zodiac comes from the Greek zodiakos, meaning circle of animals, a nod to Babylon's celestial menagerie. Hellenistic scholars like Ptolemy wove these ideas into his Tetrabiblos, the Bible of Western astrology, but the foundation was laid by those ancient stargazers who first saw the sky as a storyboard of human life. A birth under Scorpio's sting wasn't random. It was a thread in a cosmic tapestry, weaving individual fate into the universe's grand design. Yet the zodiac's true power lay in its duality. It was both a farmer's almanac and a king's oracle, guiding when to plant barley and when to wage war. The Babylonian mul, a pin, tablets, essentially celestial instruction manuals, listed which constellations heralded floods or locusts, turning star lore into survival strategy. But they also assigned each zodiac sign to a god. Ishtar ruled Virgo, bringing love and strife. Marduk oversaw Jupiter's path through Sagittarius, shaping justice and kingship. Time wasn't just measured, it was mediated, a negotiation between mortal actions and celestial decrees. this system's legacy is written in our language. The word influence comes from the Latin influentia, meaning the flow of astral power. Even our 7-day week, each day tied to a planet, Sun Day, Moon Day, Saturn Day, is a Mesopotamian gift. But perhaps their greatest insight was the idea that time and destiny aren't separate, they're entwined, like the double helix of a cosmic code. When we check our horoscopes today, however casually, we're echoing a 4,000-year-old impulse to find order in the chaos, to believe the stars might still have something to say. The Babylonians didn't just invent astrology, they gave us a vocabulary for wonder, a way to ask the oldest question of all: are we keeping time, or is time keeping us? While the rest of the world races through the 21st century, Ethiopia walks to the rhythm of an ancient drum, one that beats 7 to 8 years behind the Gregorian calendar. This isn't a mistake or a lag. It's a deliberate preservation of a chronology that dates back to the 4th century, when Christianity first took root in the highlands of Axum. Imagine celebrating New Year's Day on September 11th, not with fireworks and countdowns, but with the first spring rains after months of drought. That's Enkutatsh, the Ethiopian New Year, where time itself blossoms like the yellow daisies that carpet the countryside. At the heart of this system lies a structure unlike any other: 13 months. 12 of these span 30 days each, while the 13th, Pagium, lingers for just 5 or 6 days, a fleeting bridge between years. The word itself means forgotten time, a poetic nod to days that exist outside the usual flow. But Pagium isn't just a quirk, it's a necessity, correcting the calendar's drift from the solar year without the leap years we're familiar with. Farmers use these extra days to prepare fields for planting, while priests dedicate them to reflection, as if the year itself needs to catch its breath before beginning anew. This calendar is more than a way to mark dates, it's a testament to resilience. While Europe adopted Pope Gregory's reforms in the 16th century, Ethiopia clung to its older Alexandrian calculations, a choice that kept it out of sync with the world but deeply in tune with its own history. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church, which still follows this timeline for religious festivals, treats time as a sacred continuum. Lent, for instance, isn't just 40 days of fasting, it's Hujade, a period measured by lunar phases and tied to the Julian calendar's ancient rhythms. Even business hours in Addis Ababa follow a unique clock, where sunrise marks the start of the day and noon is 6 o'clock in local time. What's striking is how this system reflects Ethiopia's broader story, a nation that resisted colonization, preserved its language and script, and now guards its calendar with the same fierce pride. During Italy's brief occupation in the 1930s, attempts to impose the Gregorian calendar failed spectacularly, dismissed by locals as foreign nonsense. Today, the Ethiopian calendar thrives alongside modern timekeeping, a duality that feels natural rather than contradictory. Government offices might use Gregorian dates for international correspondence, but ask a farmer when to plant teff, and he'll cite the month of Meskerm when the first rains come. The deeper magic of this calendar lies in its seasons. While the West divides the year into 4 quarters, Ethiopia recognizes 3: Kyamt for summer rains, Begar for dry winter, and Belg for the short, unpredictable spring showers. These aren't just weather patterns, they're cultural touchstones. Begar, for instance, isn't just cold, it's the season of weddings and pilgrimages, when the highlands glow under clear skies. The calendar doesn't just track time, it curates it, shaping rituals, diets, and even the rhythm of daily life around the land's heartbeat. In an era of globalized time zones and digital clocks, Ethiopia's calendar stands as a quiet rebellion, a reminder that time isn't one size fits all. It's a tapestry woven from history, faith, and the turning earth, To follow this calendar isn't to reject modernity, it's to insist that progress doesn't require erasure. The next time you glance at a Gregorian date, consider the alternative, a system where years are counted from the Annunciation, where months are measured in golden sunlight and silver rains, and where time, like the Nile, flows to its own ancient song. The Armenian calendar doesn't just count days, it tells a story of survival. Hidden in its 12 months of 30 days, plus 5 mysterious epagomenal days, is a mirror of ancient Egypt's solar system, yet with a twist that's uniquely Armenian. Picture a scribe in the kingdom of Urartu, etching the names of months like Nawasad and Ahekan into stone, each one tied to harvests, battles, or ancestral gods. This wasn't just timekeeping, it was a declaration of identity, a way for a small, mountainous people to carve their place in the cosmos. For over 2,000 years, through empires and invasions, this calendar held fast until foreign rulers realized its power wasn't in the dates, but in the unity it forged. What makes this system extraordinary is how it balanced precision with poetry. Those 5 extra days, called avaliats, weren't just filler, they were a liminal space outside ordinary time when the veil between worlds thinned. Farmers used them to prepare for the new year, while priests performed rituals to ward off chaos. The months themselves were lyrical. Meri, the month of returning waters, Mehekan, when the earth slept under snow. Even the days were named for celestial bodies and natural forces, turning each sunrise into a verse in an unbroken hymn to the land. But the calendar's true genius was its resilience. When Persia's Zoroastrian influence spread, the Armenians didn't abandon their system, they adapted it, layering in local gods and festivals. Later, as Christianity took root, the church grafted biblical events onto the old pagan framework. Nawasad, once a celebration of the god Vahan, became a feast day for John the Baptist. The calendar bent but never broke, proving that time could be both flexible and unyielding. Its decline was slow, deliberate erasure. Under Byzantine and later Ottoman rule, foreign calendars were imposed not just for practicality, but to sever ties to the past. Armenian scribes were forced to record taxes in Islamic lunar years, while the church clung to the old dates in secret. By the 19th century, the calendar survived mostly in dusty manuscripts and the stubborn memories of elders, a ghost of a system that once united a nation. Yet whispers of it linger. In modern Armenia, Nawasad is still celebrated in August with bonfires and folk dances, a nod to the fire god Vahan. Academics puzzle over ancient star charts that match the calendar's solstice alignments. And in the diaspora, families mark the epagomenal days with storytelling, as if those 5 extra days still hold space for the unspoken. The Armenian calendar's greatest lesson isn't in its structure, but in its silence, how it reminds us that timekeeping isn't just about tracking the sun, but about holding the sun still, just long enough to remember who you are. The moment Julius Caesar reformed Rome's calendar, he didn't just adjust dates, he seized time itself. By aligning the year with the solar cycle, he didn't merely fix a bureaucratic mess, he cemented his grip on an empire. Taxes could now be collected like clockwork, harvests timed to feed legions, and festivals orchestrated to glorify his rule. This wasn't just astronomy, it was political alchemy, turning celestial patterns into a tool of control. Across the ancient world, from the stone observatories of the Andes to the ziggurats of Babylon, calendars were never neutral. They were levers of power, shaping when people worked, prayed, and even rebelled. Consider the Aztec sunstone, its carved surface a labyrinth of time and terror. The emperor didn't just consult this calendar, he wielded it. When the binding of the years arrived every 52 cycles, the empire held its breath. Priests lit new fires on the chests of sacrificial victims, a visceral reminder that the state alone could restart time or let it collapse into chaos. Farmers, warriors, and merchants all moved to this rhythm, their lives tethered to a chronology that doubled as a divine mandate. Miss a tax payment during the month of Tilakaksaipualistli, and you weren't just late, you were sacrilegious. In Egypt, the pharaohs went further, embedding their authority in the very fabric of time. The annual Nile flood, predicted by Sirius's rising, wasn't just a natural event, it was proof of the king's sacred bond with the gods. By controlling the calendar, scribes could declare when labor was owed for pyramid building or when grain stores would be measured. A well-timed festival could rally loyalty, while a delayed harvest announcement might crush dissent. The calendar was the ultimate propaganda, framing the ruler not just as a governor but as the linchpin holding chaos at bay. Even decentralized societies weaponized time. The Inca's solstice markers at Machu Picchu weren't just astronomical tools, they were territorial claims. By dictating when planting began across their empire, they turned disparate tribes into a synchronized machine. Miss the date to sow quinoa, and your village starved, follow it, and you fed the state's storehouses. Time became a silent enforcer of imperial will, knitting distant valleys into a single, sun-worshipping organism. The irony, these systems often outlasted their creators. When Spanish conquistadors smashed Aztec calendars, indigenous communities secretly preserved fragments, clinging to their stolen chronologies like coded resistance. Today's governments still manipulate time, daylight savings, fiscal years. Even time zones are modern echoes of an ancient truth. Whoever controls the clock controls the culture. The next time you glance at a calendar, ask yourself whose power is ticking inside it. Every time we glance at our smartphones to check the date or set a meeting reminder, we're tapping into a lineage of timekeeping that stretches back to the banks of the Nile and the ziggurats of Babylon. The Gregorian calendar we take for granted is a patchwork of ancient ingenuity, its leap years borrowed from Julius Caesar's reforms, which themselves were lifted from Egyptian solar calculations, while its 7-day week traces straight back to Babylonian star worshippers who named each day after a celestial god. Even daylight saving time, that modern annoyance, echoes the seasonal adjustments of the Chinese agricultural calendar, where planting and harvest were tied to the sun's shifting path. But there's a profound irony in our digital age. We've never been more precise in measuring time. Atomic clocks tick with near-perfect accuracy, and satellites sync our schedules down to the nanosecond, yet we've never felt more disconnected from its rhythms. Ancient cultures didn't just track time, they lived in conversation with it. When the Egyptians saw Sirius rise, they didn't just note a date, they prepared for the Nile's life-giving flood. The Babylonians didn't merely record eclipses, they read them as divine texts altering the fates of kings. For them, time wasn't abstract, it was the pulse of the cosmos, woven into everything from temple rituals to the price of barley. Today, our calendars are sterile grids stripped of celestial poetry. Where Mayan priests once calculated Venus's cycles to predict auspicious moments for coronations, we now get push notifications for dentist appointments. The Incas carved solstice markers into mountainsides to honor the sun god in Tai. We argue over clock changes to save daylight for office productivity. Something vital has been lost in this transition, the sense that time isn't just a resource to mine, but a relationship to nurture, yet fragments of ancient wisdom persist. Farmers in India still plant crops by the Hindu Panchang's lunar phases, and Tibetan doctors harvest herbs during specific planetary alignments, believing their potency peaks under certain stars. Even our stubborn attachment to astrology apps, those digital echoes of Babylonian zodiac lore, hints at a hunger to reconnect time with meaning. The challenge isn't to abandon modern precision, but to remember what we've sidelined, that timekeeping began as a bridge between earth and sky, a way to align human lives with something greater than schedules. Perhaps the most enduring legacy of these ancient systems isn't in their mechanics, but in their philosophy. They understood that time wasn't just about counting, it was about belonging. When we speed through days without noticing the moon's phase or the solstice's light, we're not just efficient, we're impoverished. The next time you add an event to your calendar, pause. Imagine it not as a slot in a grid, but as a stitch in the vast, shimmering tapestry our ancestors wove, one that still hums with the old, deep truth: time doesn't just pass. It sings. Ancient calendars were never just tools, they were living philosophies carved into stone, written in starlight, and whispered in the turning of seasons. Think of the Mayan priest tracking Venus not to schedule meetings, but to hear the gods' whispers about when to plant corn or crown a king, or the Babylonian astronomer scribbling eclipse omens on clay tablets, convinced the fate of empires hung on celestial patterns. These systems didn't just mark time, they made time meaningful, weaving human lives into something vast and sacred. In a world where our smartwatches buzz with reminders but leave our souls starved, these ancient rhythms offer a radical alternative. What if time isn't something to conquer, but to commune with? The deeper we dig into these calendars, the clearer it becomes. They were blueprints for entire worldviews. The Hindu Panchang didn't just count days, it mapped the soul's journey across lifetimes, turning eclipses into portals for meditation. The Inca's solstice markers at Machu Picchu weren't cold astronomical tools, they were stone prayers ensuring the sun would return to warm their terraces. Even the Aztec sunstone, with its terrifying demand for blood, held a profound truth: time wasn't free. It required sacrifice, attention, a reciprocity modern life has forgotten. These cultures understood something we've lost, that how we measure time shapes how we live. Consider the contrast. Today, we slice our days into productivity blocks, chasing deadlines under artificial light, barely noticing the moon's phase. But stand with an Aboriginal elder in Australia as they point to the emu in the dark constellation, and you'll hear time described as a story, one where the land, the stars, and human lives are threads in the same unbroken tale. Or watch a Tibetan monk consult his Pecha manuscript to choose an auspicious moment for a ritual, believing the universe itself leans in during certain alignments. These aren't primitive beliefs, they're sophisticated systems that nurtured resilience, community, and awe for millennia. This isn't about nostalgia. It's about rediscovering a vocabulary for time that our digital age has erased. Ancient calendars remind us that before time was money, it was myth. Before it was counted, it was cherished. The Polynesian navigator didn't just use stars to cross oceans, he saw them as ancestors guiding him home. The Egyptian farmer kneeling as Sirius rose wasn't just checking a date, he was participating in a cosmic covenant that kept his world alive. These perspectives aren't relics, they're mirrors showing us what we've gained in precision but lost in poetry. So here's the invitation: next time you glance at your calendar, pause. Behind those sterile grids lie echoes of a time when humans danced with the cosmos instead of racing against it. Maybe we can't return to tracking solstices on stone circles, but we can steal back a little of that wisdom: plant herbs by the moon's phase, notice how the light changes with the equinox, or simply sit still long enough to feel time breathe. The ancients left us more than artifacts, they left us a question. What if the real measure of a life isn't how much we cram into our days, but how deeply we let the days change us? Dive into the comments and tell us, how could you weave a little of this ancient wisdom into your modern rhythm? And if you're hungry for more conversations where history shakes hands with the present, hit subscribe. The past isn't done speaking.